Hello, friends. Yesterday we looked at our big book about kindness. Today I'm going to tell you a special kind of story. This type of story is one that you listen to and you use your brain to imagine what's happening instead of looking at pictures. So while I'm telling you this story, I want you to pretend that there's a movie playing in your brain about the words that I'm saying. Our story for today is a retelling of a story by the Brothers Grimm. The Brothers Grimm were authors who published or put into books a lot of well-known fairy tales. Have you heard of any of their stories? Like Sleeping Beauty, Hansel and Gretel, or Cinderella? If you've ever heard those stories, that means you've heard a fairy tale by the Brothers Grimm. A fairy tale is made up of some different parts. Fairy tales have imaginary creatures with special powers. There are mysterious adventures or events, and the story ends happily. Before we start, there are two important words to know from our story. The first word is amazement. When you are in amazement of something, that means you were very surprised by it. The first time I saw a rainbow after a rainy day, I was in amazement. It was so beautiful. I didn't think that a rainbow would show up after it was raining. The other word you need to know is usual. Usual just means something that happens a lot. I might say, on a usual day, I make sure that I eat breakfast before I go into work and see all my friends. On an unusual day, I might not have time to make breakfast. So again, friends, usual, it just means something that happens a lot. All right, we're almost ready. One last thing. While I'm telling you this story, I want you to think about our essential question. Is it better to give kindness or receive it? Our story today is called The Elves and the Shoemaker by the Brothers Grimm, retold by Emily Greggs and Bethany Martin. And again, my friends, this story is a fairy tale. Before we read it, I want you to think about your shoes. What are they made of? Well, most shoes are made out of leather because it's pretty durable. That means it's made to last. You can even look at your shoes or your parents' shoes. All right, friends, let's read our story. The Elves and the Shoemaker. Once upon a time, there lived a shoemaker. He worked very hard, but he was still very poor. At last, he had only one piece of leather. It was just enough to make one pair of shoes. He cut the leather and put it on his table. "I will make the shoes in the morning," he said to his wife. The shoemaker and his wife went to sleep and slept peacefully through the night. In the morning, he went to his table, and to his amazement, the shoes were already made. The shoemaker did not know what to think. They were the finest shoes he had ever seen. Now, what do the authors mean when they said, to his amazement, the shoes were already made? Well, they might have meant he was so surprised that the shoes were already made. He was amazed. He was surprised because he didn't expect that to happen. All right, let's keep reading. The same day, a rich man came into the shop. "I like these shoes very much. They are just my size," said the man. "I will pay you a higher price than usual for them." And he gave the shoemaker 2 coins. What did the rich man mean when he says, "I will pay you a higher price than usual"? Well, because he liked the shoe so much, maybe he meant that usually maybe he'd pay 1 coin, but he liked it so much that he would pay more than usual, so he'd pay him 2 coins. All right, so the shoemaker used those 2 coins to buy leather for 2 more pairs of shoes. He cut the leather and went to bed. In the morning, the shoemaker found 2 pairs of shoes already made. "Who is making these shoes?" said the shoemaker. "These are the best shoes I have ever seen." Soon, 2 customers came in and bought the shoes. They paid him 4 coins. The shoemaker bought leather for 4 more pairs of shoes. Just as before, he cut out the leather. In the morning, he found 4 more pairs of shoes. And soon, 4 customers came in and bought the shoes. And so it went for some time. "I would like to stay up tonight to see who is making the shoes," said the shoemaker. His wife liked the idea too, so they hid behind a curtain. They watched and they waited. At midnight, in came 2 little elves. They sat on the table and went right to work. They stitched and sewed. The elves worked until all the shoes were done. Then they were gone in a flash. What is it about this part of the story that makes it a fairy tale? Remember, fairy tales have imaginary creatures with special powers, and we just read about elves, and elves are imaginary creatures with special powers. And also remember, there are mysterious adventures or events, and it was pretty mysterious for the shoemaker because he didn't know how those shoes were getting made. All right, let's see what happens. The next day, the wife said, "These elves have been so kind to us. I want to do something kind for them. They need new clothes to keep warm. I will make each of them pants, a shirt, and a coat. And you can make them each a pair of shoes." And they went right to work. That night, the shoemaker did not leave leather on the table. He left the nice clothes and shoes instead. The shoemaker and his wife hid behind the curtain to see what the elves would do. At midnight, in came 2 little elves. When they saw the clothes for them, they laughed and hopped around the room. "Look how happy they are," the shoemaker whispered to his wife. The elves put on the clothes and skipped and danced. At last they danced out the door and were never seen again. And the kind shoemaker and his wife lived happily ever after. Now, what other parts of the story made it a fairy tale? Well, remember, fairy tales end happily, and this story had a happy ending. Today, during our pods, we will be discussing this story. Some questions I want you to think about are, how did the elves show kindness? How did their kindness help the shoemaker? And how did the shoemaker and his wife show kindness? Do your best to hold all these ideas in your brain, and I'll see you later.